This is a worked example on how to find the value of a trig function if you're given the value of another one. So for this problem, we were given the value of sine as -7/25, and we want to find the value of cosine, and we're also given this extra condition that theta is in quadrant 4. That might seem very random, but that'll come into play a little bit later. So first, let me just write down the important formulas to know for this problem. We have that x squared plus y squared equals r squared formula, and we also know that sine of theta is y over r, and that cosine of theta is x over r. So we can start by actually deciphering what what our values of x, y, and r are going to be. So I want to fill in these values at some point, x, y, and r. And so sine gives us our first major hint, right? We have sine of theta, and we know from our formulas that sine is y over r, and that value actually equals -7/25. But how do we know which value to make negative, right? So y, I guess our first bit of information is we know y is going to be plus or minus 7, and that r will be plus or minus 25. But how do we know which one of those values gets the negative symbol, right? Because only one of them is going to be negative. Well, if we think about it, on our unit circle, and that's not a very centered unit circle, but you have to work with me, wherever our point ends up, right? I have a point out here somewhere, and my y value of this point is, x is whatever, and then y is plus or minus 7. Well, let's assume that the 25, that r is the one that got the negative. If I said that r was -25, that would imply that the distance to that point is a negative value, and that doesn't really make sense. Distance can't be negative. It has to be a positive value. So we can assume that our 7 is going to be the one that gets the negative sign, right? So we can make the assumption with full confidence that r is 25 and that y is going to be the value that gets that negative sign from that 7, right? And so with this scratch work I have right here, we figured out two of our values. I want to erase it. I'll put it to the side, but we don't need this for right now. Now we want to try and figure out what our value of x is going to be. And for this, we can use those formulas I have written down in yellow, right? So I can start substituting my values. So I know that x squared plus -7 squared equals 25 squared. And these values turn out to be, so -7 squared is 49, 25 squared is 625, and then if I subtract over that 49, I'm going to get 576. And if I take the square root of both sides, this might look like it's going to be kind of ugly, but this actually turns out to be quite a nice number. It's 24. The square root of 576 is just going to be 24. But we're not quite done, right? It might be tempting to say, okay, easy, x is going to be 24, but we can't quite stop there. The reason is, if you look at this formula, or this line right here, that formula isn't quite strong enough to tell whether or not x is going to be negative. And what I mean by that is we had this value of -7, which turned into a positive 49. If 7 was positive, we would still get a positive 49. If 7 is negative, which it was, we still get a positive 49. So our formula in this process can't really tell if x was supposed to be positive, if x was supposed to be negative. And where we take advantage of our original question is we have this line here with theta in quadrant 4. So we can use that bit of information to figure out what the value of x should be. And so think about it like this. If I have, and let me make a little bit of room here, let's move these calculations over. If I've got a unit circle, all right, right here, I am told that cosine of theta is in quadrant 4. I know that quadrant 4 is this quadrant right here, and so I want to look and think, well, I'm looking for the value of cosine, which is an x value. Are the x values positive or negative in quadrant 4? And the answer is, well, if I move along the x-axis in the positive direction, I'm in quadrant 4. And then, of course, we already know that our y value was negative. So we had a negative y value, and so a negative y value and a positive x value puts us somewhere in the realm of quadrant 4. And so with that extra added hint that theta is in quadrant 4, we can know that the cosine value has to be a positive x because I want to stay positive. If x was negative, that would land us instead in quadrant 3, and that's not what we want. So our x value is in fact going to be a positive 24. And those are all the three values we have, and so we have everything we would want, and we can finally fill in the remaining information by saying that our final answer, cosine of theta, that is x over r, x is 24 and r is 25. And so our final value, cosine of theta, is 24 over 25.